All right, welcome to the horse racing happy hour. Mike and Doppel here. Oh, now we get the music, Zach. Listen, I don't know what's going on.
Oh, music delay. What's up? I love it.
And we got Louis. The mouse is not moving, but we're hearing words. It's awesome.
Okay, good enough.
All right, so we are here, horse racing happy hour. I'm in the United States. Louis is not. Well, I guess technically Louis is in the United States.
I am definitely in the United States. You want to know?
Yeah. So Louis is down in
Hey,
Puerto
Zach,
Rico.
do me a favor. Lift up those logos for right now. We want to see Dan Illman's beautiful face.
That's true. We do want to see Dan Illman's actual face. Not put him behind the horse happy.
And he is Dan Illman from the DRF. Joins us again for some reason at DRF_Dan Illman. You find him there on Twitter, of course. And then covering all things Mid-Atlantic for the DRF. Lots of really good videos on their website as well. So make sure you go check out all of Dan's stuff. And then, of course, our guy, John Piassek, who I go head-to-head with on our America's Best Racing picks and all those sorts of things. They're off on Twitter with the Maryland Breeders and all that. Gentlemen, how are we? Happy? I mean, what do we call this day? Because I think Mike and I have always thought of this as Barbara Fritchie Day. I'm not going to lie. I know it's General George Day.
Well, I always call it General George / Barbara Fritchie Day because, as far as I'm concerned, they kind of have like equal standing in my book. So it's kind of like it's a double bill kind of deal. So
Laurel likes to come up with cute names for each of their stakes races. I'm not sure if this is the Winter Festival or the Winter Carnival or something.
Yeah, no, who's lose track? It's like you got a spectacular. This is a carnival. Okay. This is a festival. This is a extravaganza. Actually, I think this one is called Winter Mardi Gras. Is what this one's called.
No.
Or Mardi Gras in Maryland or something. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Mardi Gras.
Mardi Gras in Maryland.
When I think Laurel, Maryland, I think Mardi Gras.
I mean, it is a super Catholic thing, right? Mardi Gras is a Catholic thing in Maryland. That's the first diocese in the United States.
Yeah.
Let's go for it. I'm all for it.
There you go. But we do have a couple preps here. Obviously, races 3 and 4 for those 3-year-olds. This is why we're doing these shows. Get you ready for that Preakness trail, for that Black-Eyed Susan trail. The wide country is race 3, 7 furlongs for the fillies, and then race 4 will be the Miracle Wood for the boys. Stretched about to a mile here. 1-turn mile at Laurel. Reminder that they could easily host the Breeders' Cup there. And so, I'd like to drop that in for John every episode.
Laurel, the older I get Miracle Wood every once in a while, I guess,
a little Miracle Wood, that's right. And then the late pick 5 here is, I mean, it's as good a pick 5 as there is in the country. Probably outside of the Risen Star pick 5, but frankly, I think it's second best. And so that late pick 5, and Dan always likes to remind you, low takeout rate on that pick 5.
12%, can't beat that.
Yeah, it's very playable. So,
I would like to say, too, with all due respect to anyone who might be playing tomorrow, I really hope nobody hits it. That way, we'll have a carryover on top of what's already a great sequence. So, once again, I love everyone out there. Love everyone who plays Maryland. Please don't hit the pick 5 tomorrow. That's all I ask.
There you go. All right, and I think they listen to the show, and here's how I know. I scolded them last month for carding a nickel claimer at the end of this card. And this month, we get an optional claimer. We get a starter allowance. I mean,
a nice field,
starter
too.
optional claimer. You're damn right. Listen to this show, people. Good ideas, and then they put them in place. It's actually a very playable thing. So we'll get into all of it. But, Mike, go ahead and get us started with race 3.
Yeah, so the first race we're going to talk about is the wide country. It's a 7-furlong sprint on the dirt for 3-year-old fillies. $100,000 purse. This is a prep for the Black-Eyed Susan. And let's get started. Dan, what do you think about this race?
I think that we're not going to see maybe the caliber of filly we've seen the last couple of years. We've seen horses like Street Loot and Luna Bell win this race. Yep. And at that point, they were the dominant 3-year-old fillies in Maryland. And I think these fillies are still sort of sorting themselves out. I think that the winner of the extra heat, L Street Lady, is probably the horse to beat for trainer Brittany Russell. She got a very nice trip last time out and ran down Chickiness, who's also in this field. One of the more interesting race horses in the race is from New York, that Stonewall Star, a New York bred, who finished third in her one start at Laurel, but she was in against Malibu Moonshine that day, who probably would be favored if she was running in this race. Interesting is kind of this horse coming in from Northern California, trying dirt for the first time. Sally Sassy, it looks like she can finish up a little bit. Dirt's a big question mark. I looked at this race. I really don't love anyone. Chickiness to me might be the third choice in this race. And while she had no excuse last time out, when losing to L Street Lady, I think she's going to get to the front, and maybe they'll leave her alone a little bit.
We're
John?
seeing Sally Sassy out of the Jonathan Wong barn here, which is interesting, Dan, because you know this. In Northern California, he has to make that transition from Golden Gate to the fair scene, which a lot of those races are on dirt. So he's done it before. And, you know, with his barn largely moving to Kentucky at this point, I think you're going to see his name a little bit in some of these stakes. I think like a Barbara Fritchie next year or a General George might have more Wong.
And he has excellent numbers. Synthetic to dirt, I checked it out in DRF's formulator. He's 8 for his last 23 with a big ROI.
John, what do you think about this race?
I think it begins and ends with L Street Lady. I really liked her win last time in the extra heat because going into that race, I thought it was kind of a coin flip between her and Trickiness. I liked both of them. And L Street Lady raced wide throughout, didn't change leads, but still drew off pretty impressively. Won by 2 1/4 lengths on the Brisnet scale. Ran a much improved figure of 91. That's pretty far and away the best last out figure in the field. As someone who works for the MHBA, I do have to Preakness. Her and Gormley's Gabriella, 2 of the 17 Maryland breds entered in Stakes Company on Saturday. That being said, I'm a little bit over Chickiness. I mean, looked pretty good in winning a Maryland Million Lassie, but has lost 3 of her next 4, all of them at low odds. In fact, her only win was in an allowance optional claiming race 2 starts back that she really couldn't lose. Every time she's had her face top quality, relatively speaking, stakes caliber horses since then, she really hasn't done much, and I think she'll take a lot more money than she deserves. So
And John's absolutely right. I mean, I won't argue with anyone that says L Street Lady A is probably the best horse coming in, B might have the most upside potential, and 3 might get the best trip sitting off the pace. She is going to take a lot of money. The lead change thing didn't bother me. I talked to Brittany Russell earlier today. It did bother me. It didn't bother Brittany.
I wanted to ask, so last month we explained a lot of these were state-bred races or state-sired races. Dan, have we gotten to the point where we've stripped that off of the list of reasons that you could or could not enter these races?
For these races, yes. These are going to be open stakes races. You're going to see horses shipping down as we see Stonewall Stars in New York bred. She's here. She was running an open company at Laurel in her last race. These you're going to see Maryland breds near the good ones, and they're going to have to step. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in the Barbara Fritchie.
All right, we're going to move on to the 4th race, which is the Miracle Wood Stakes. This is a mile in the dirt for 3-year-olds in a prep for the Tessio and the Preakness. We got to right off the bat, Louis, like a horse that should be the horse of the show, the Feeling Woozy. You know, it's gonna be my sentimental pick right there. The Irish War Cry.
Beer Cold is coming up later too. So I mean, it's like everyone's doing a lot for this show while we improve the card as well. No, I
agree.
Give and take. Yeah.
So why don't you go ahead and Louis tell us who you like in this one?
You know, Prince of Jericho. I mean, just I hate to go back to back with really. He wins by 4 last time out. He had the fluky turnaround. Gets to keep the Lasix here because of the Maryland rules. It'll be interesting to see how they handle this horse going forward. But the 7 furlong seemed to be really nice to him. I think going an extra furlong is going to be even better. There's a Munnings, Medaglia d'Oro on the bottom. He seems to be bred for it. I would like to look in another place, but I think that Triple Crown nomination was tossed on him because they're hoping to back their way in through the Tessio and get him into the Preakness.
John, you think anyone's going to challenge Prince of Jericho?
I do not. And I know Louis mentioned, it could be interesting to see where he goes. And I know the obvious road for a Maryland-based 3-year-old is to go to the Tessio. However, if he wins this impressively, I think they'll have to at least consider putting him in the Wood Memorial at Aqueduct, give him a shot at maybe getting a few Derby points. I mean, he ran like a possible Derby horse last time out. It was him against Coffee with Chris, who's also in here, and he just ran away from him in a nice wide move, 1 by 4 lengths going away. And if he had one like that at a bigger track, he's probably on the bottom of a lot of people's top 20 Derby lists. But because it was in Maryland, he's not getting as much attention. I do think while Prince of Jericho is a pretty obvious win bet and a pretty obvious single in the pick 5, if you're playing an exacta or a trifecta, there's a lot of ways to go. As Mike mentioned, Feeling Woozy, one of 5 Maryland breds in here,
Nice horse.
won a first level allowance at this distance pretty impressively last time out. Got pace pressure, drew off, won by almost 3 lengths, and ran a career best distance speed figure. Coffee with Chris, a solid second behind Prince of Jericho after a win in the HEP 2 starts back. 7's11, a son of Bandbach for Carlos Mencia, broke his maiden on the lead last time out in a much improved performance. There's a lot of horses in here who could take big steps forward and could come in second if Prince of Jericho runs his race.
Dan, which is you?
It's the rubber match, Mike. Coffee with Chris beat Prince of Jericho the first time they met. Brittany Russell told Carol Cedeno, be a lot more aggressive. Don't let that horse get away in the last time out in the spectacular bid. And Carol listened perfectly, and Prince of Jericho ran right by him. The key determining factor, I think, is distance. Brittany is embracing distance with Prince of Jericho. I talked to John Salzman. He's very concerned about Coffee with Chris as these distances increase. I agree with you guys. Prince of Jericho is the horse to beat. If I'm looking to play exactas, I'm looking at 2 horses. I'm looking at Riccio, a horse that ran 3rd last time out, who's just this big, giant horse who is crying out for more distance and ground, and he's going to get a chance to stretch out to a route here. And B West, who last time, if you watched his race, he was moving really well, and then he got dirt kicked in his face for the first time, and he completely freaked out. He lost his action. He dropped back 3, 4, 5 lengths, and then he ran on at the end for 3rd. He's a horse that has already won twice at the 1-turn mile at Laurel.
I could get on board with Riccio. I mean, again, that means a curl of hair in Italian, so that's that. I think that fits. You know, I definitely have. Listen, I definitely have the best hair on the show right now. I'll tell you that right now. Illman's close though.
Interesting sequence actually here. This starts a middle pick 4 here that I really like actually. That ends with 2 of those stakes right in the middle of the card actually. So this is kind of a fun early sequence here. John,
what were you gonna say?
No, well, 2 things. One, first of all, I did a story about Coffee with Chris for Mid-Atlantic Thoroughbred magazine, and John Salzman said the same thing that Dan said, like, because I kind of nudged him, like, so, I think maybe he's possible Derby Preakness horse, and John said, like, no, like, this horse, maybe he'll go a 1-turn mile, but I don't think he'll go any further, so just echoing what Dan said, I think Coffee with Chris could be in a bit of trouble going longer, but hoping the best. And 2, it's kind of funny because on Saturday, my parents are coming down for the weekend, and my dad's friend and I are all going to hang out at the track. And I feel like Dan, Louie, and I are me, my dad, and his friend talking about horses based on handicapping merits. And Mike is like, my mom betting horses because of their names.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll win.
Takes
more.
all time. I swear to God, I give my wife 1 bet at the track every time we go for $5, and she's like, "Pollo Pico, is that spicy chicken? I'll bet that one 7-1."
Yeah, basically, it's like, hey, I like that name.
Your kids are like hitting trifectas and like pick 3s that way too, Louie, aren't they? I mean,
I know, 100%.
Yeah, I love it. I'm here for comic relief, John. In the smallest.
I respect it. You know what? It's good to break it up sometimes. It's very good. So I got no problems.
We're gonna move on to race 6, which is the John B. Campbell Stakes. It's $100,000. It's about a mile and 16th. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of a mile and 16th, and it's on the dirt here. Who do we like in this one? We'll start with you, Mr. Piassek.
Yeah, this is could be the most wide open stakes on the card, and that's saying something because there are a lot of wide open stakes. 10 horses, 5 Maryland breds, went back and forth and back quite a bit in this one. Ended up going with number 3, Treasure Trove on top. One of 3 in here, trainer Lynn Cash. The other 2 being Maryland breds, Plot the Dots and Double Crown. Treasure Trove is not a Maryland bred, but he is coming in off back-to-back impressive allowance wins, 1 down here, 1 in Aqueduct. Both times he made nice, strong moves on the back of the pack to win. Both times closing off of very slow paces. 2 starts back here. He sit off a half in 50 seconds flat, 3/4, 1:14 and 4. Didn't slow him down 1 bit. He kicked away pretty powerfully. Just missed his career top figure that day, and then he exceeded his career top last time out at Aqueduct, grinding up on the outside and winning by 3 parts of a length, going a mile and an 1/8. This is a mile and a 16th. Have to figure, even if the pace is slow, he should make his usual move and get up and get the job done. And nice part about this field too is no matter who you like, you're almost guaranteed to get a good price.
Dan?
I agree that Treasure Trove is a very logical contender, and he's also a pretty popular horse around Maryland because he's an older half brother to Rombauer, who of course won Preakness a couple of years ago. I'm going to go for a price in here. Shake 'em Loose has to be one. I think he's double digits on the morning line, and he was a multiple stakes winner last year, so he showed that he could step. Now, last time out was his first race in about 8 months. And in that race, if you actually watch it, he made a very early wide move and was placed on a hard chase on the turn going in against Zabra Kadabra, a horse that was just in raging form at the time. I like the fact that he held on gamely for second. He had to be getting tired in his first start back off an 8-month break. Held on for second over American Dioro, a horse that came back the other day and won with a 91 Buyer's speed figure. I think he gained a lot of fitness from that race. I think he's a price in here, and I think he's relatively lightly raced enough that there's some upside.
Yeah,
Louis?
so Dan, I always love having you on because I can ask you DRF questions. So under the distance on a mile and a 16th, how many distances count as a mile and a 16th in the form?
I'm guessing it's a mile and a 16th and about a mile and a 16th, which is
There
what
it is. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, because
there are some distances, by the way, that are kind of
mile and 3/16 always comes to mind for me. Yeah.
Yeah, 5.5 can be a little bit tricky at
Yep.
times, and there could be a big difference based on the configuration. So I always say, do your own work.
Well, there you go, man. Dan and I landed on the same horse, which makes me think that our Nation on Parade is going to get back to form and just rock the deal. I do think Vance Scholars has a serious shot here. I like his form recently. I think that the move to the younger Capuano barn here has been good for a lot of horses. Frankly, his early numbers are very, very good in the return there. But I'm with Dan here, man. I think that you got a chance at a price. I think John's started this conversation perfectly, which is good shot at a price in this spot here for sure. And so if you feel like a horse has a shot, go ahead and use them. I think Armando R is another horse here too that has a really, really serious shot. Seems to love 2 turns. Didn't fire all that well last time out, but sometimes horses just don't do that. Gets a little bit of time off here, about 5-6 weeks. I like that. That's a barn that does really well with that kind of time off as well. So use a couple of horses here, but I do think Shake 'em Loose and Armando R are going to be part of the equation at the end.
Yeah, ironically enough, this race used to be a mile and 3/16, Louis, and when it was at Pimlico in the from 86 to 2001. So the race has been around for a long time, since 1954. So
do you know they have tight turns at Pimlico?
Oh yeah, really?
How people are saying it.
We're going to move on to the 7th race, which is the Nellie Morse Stakes. It's a $100,000 race, and again about a mile and 16th on the dirt. We're just going to do this one for the girls. So we'll start with Louis. Louis, who do you like here?
Yeah, this is one where I want to like the morning line favorite here, Hybrid Eclipse, more for the connections I think than recent form. 3 for 7 last year, does get a little bit of time off here, which I think probably was good for her as well. A bit like Armando R in the last race. I think she's obviously going to be near the front of the pace there and going to be if she gets her race, she's going to be 3rd, 4th in the race. She's going to press and she's going to get a shot at that. I'm trying to figure out who the sort of obvious early speed is here that she's going to be able to chase. Maybe it's By the Best, but that horse has been closing recently. I really don't know. Award Wanted is interesting in this race as well for John Robb, and obviously he and Cruz not a huge combination. Horse worked really, really well in the middle of January at Laurel. Has 5 wins and 18 lifetime starts there. This to me, for only having 7 horses, feels like 3 or 4 of them could absolutely jump up. So I'll be honest, I don't feel great about any of them. I think a horse like 90% Bryn, for example, coming in for Robert Reed from Parks, even though it was at a lower optional claiming level, is the kind of horse that could come in, go 2 turns and just love it. And just happen to like Laurel, is coming in off that win early in January at Parks. So I don't want to say all, but this feels kind of like an all kind of race.
John?
Well, I picked Hybrid Eclipse on top in here, but as Louis said, I mean, there's a million ways to go. I can see a case for just about anybody. Hybrid Eclipse likes this track a lot. Won 2 stakes on this track last year. 2 starts back. Won the 38 Go-Go Stakes. Came for well off the pace to win going away. Came in 3rd in the carousel behind Malibu Beauty, who had a pretty easy front-running trip. And really, the way that race played out, especially since Hybrid Eclipse got caught wide, really nobody had a shot at catching her. Just to your point about who could possibly take the early lead. The only one who I could really see is number 5, Pistol Liz Ablazin, one of 2 in here for Butch Reed. Battled on the pace 2 starts back in late October at Parks, 1 going away, made her first start off a bit of a layoff, going 7 furlongs, but I'm not sure is quite her speed. I think she's better off going 2 turns, even though it's only 1 race sample size, but still. And came in 4th that day. Goes second off the break here, goes back around 2 turns, and if she's sent early by Frankie Pennington, who comes in for this mount and Barron later in the day, she could be tough to catch.
Dan?
I agree that Pistol Liz Ablazin's probably going to make the lead in here for Butch Reed. I think Award Wanted is a horse that has shown some speed in the past and is going to get close. Hybrid Eclipse, Award Wanted, they look very strong. They're going to take a lot of money. I'm not sure there's such an edge that I want to take a short price. Hybrid Eclipse is the accomplished horse, the stakes winner 2 starts back, forced to make 2 moves last time out in a paceless race. She had to move early to get into it, and she still got wired. As for Award Wanted, couldn't have asked for a better trip last time out. Just saved ground in the pocket. The rail opened up. She saved every inch of ground. So give me By the Best, a horse that can get close to a moderate pace. The distance is somewhat of a question mark, but her last race at Parks was pretty good. It was a race where they ran 1-2 all the way around the track. She was the only horse making up late ground, and I think that's a pretty good sign, stretching out in distance where she can get comfortable and up close. Plus, she won a couple of stakes races last year, so she's shown ability in the past.
So, Louis, later on in the show, we're going to talk about the Rachel Alexander Stakes. And, of course, Rachel Alexander was one of the few fillies, one of 2 fillies to win the Preakness Stakes, the other one being Nellie Morse. Nellie Morse won the Preakness in 1924, but is the only horse to win the Black-Eyed Susan and the Preakness Stakes. Did it 3 days apart. Issel would love that stat. Issel, that's an Issel. That is an Issel. Man, I went from Dan Issel to Dan Illman today, too. Now I'm realizing so. Jesus. It's craziness. I can't even imagine running in the Black-Eyed Susan and 3 days later winning the Preakness. I mean, it's unfathomable to even think about, right? So,
they're racing after her 99 years later.
Yeah, right. All right, so we're moving on to race 8. We're getting into the first grade 3 of the day. Again, we're arguing on whether this is Barbara Fritchie Day or not, and so or the General George. So this is a huge race, $250,000 race, 7 furlongs on the dirt for fillies and mares, 4-year-olds and up. Again, we'll start with John here because I know that this is a big race for them. Who do you like in the Barbara Fritchie?
Well, both from a job standpoint, a personal standpoint, and from a handicapping and from an honest to God handicapping standpoint, I really like Fille d'Esprit. Obviously she loves Lowell, 12 for 19 on this track. And last time out in What a Summer Stakes, that was really a statement race because 2 starts back, she didn't run too well, swaying to and fro, beat her in the Will on the Move pretty easily. And one might have thought maybe the tides are kind of turning in Mid-Atlantic Sprint female division, maybe swaying to and fro. Possibly her greatest South Carolina bred who ever lived is now a queen of that division. But Fille d'Esprit bounced back in a big way, made her usual move, drew off to win very impressively, and earned a career best Prisoner speed figure. Granted, it is a tougher field than she's used to. Prodigy Doll coming 3rd off the layoff has some back class, obviously Union Lake and Pass the Champagne, both grid stakes placed. That being said, Fille d'Esprit is in career best form. I don't think the outside post is going to bother her too much. I think she'll sit her usual trip kind of in mid-pack and make her wide move, and she'll get her first ever graded stakes win, an inch closer to that illustrious $1 million mark.
All right, there it is. So Louis, is Pass the Champagne too highbrow to be a horse for the show? No, okay, all right, we'll do that.
Put some orange juice in
Well,
it.
it depends if it's in a paper bag or not.
Well, there you go, right? And who do you like in this one?
Bought it, yeah,
I respect Fille d'Esprit. I'm rooting for Fille d'Esprit. She ran 3rd in this race last year. I think she's going to run 3rd again. I like the 2 horses shipping in, Union Lake and Pass the Champagne. I have a very tough time separating them. I go with a better price. I assume the better price will be Union Lake. You're looking for race 2 starts. Really the key for Union Lake is this. Can she be as effective without Lasix as she is with? She's 3 for 3 with Lasix. She's over 3 without. And you look at that race 2 starts back, that's pretty bad without Lasix. She got a 0 buyer and got beat 150 lengths. I talked to John Terranova, and you can believe trainers speak all you want. He said when John Velasquez got off the Raven run that day, he said we were down inside. She kind of brushed up and kind of very minor clipped heels with the horse in front of her, and she just didn't like that at all and gave up, and Velasquez decided to take care of her. She comes back last time out in a second level allowance in the Fog at Aqueduct. She ran down a horse on the lead that came right back to win with a 91 or a 92 buyer. I love this outside post position. I love her tactical speed, and I love her upside. As for Pass the Champagne, she's very talented. It's a shame she's had her share of physical problems. Just look at the layoffs. In only her 3rd lifetime start, she gets beat ahead by Malathot, who is now a 2-time Eclipse Award winner. And then she runs terribly in the Kentucky Oaks with trouble. She disappears for a long time. She comes back and she wins. She disappears for a long time. She ran great last time out in a 2-turn race where she won the duel. She lost the war. I personally think she's better going 7/8 of a mile. I love horses cutting back to this distance. I think she might be the class of the field.
Is she getting better with age? I mean, that's a huge speed figure she threw up in that race. I mean,
it's so hard to decide. I love looking at lightly raced 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds and trying to project improvement, and I think you can. When we're getting to the lightly raced 5-year-olds and you're assuming they've had all these sorts of physical problems, I'm guessing we might have seen her best yet, but her best is pretty darn good and good enough to win this.
Yeah. Louis?
I agree. I have Pass the Champagne on top, and I agree with Dan that it's a distance thing for me and a class thing for me. I think she's the most. I think she's the classiest,
class
in this race for sure. Class 1 class for sure. And I would land on her. I think this is an opportunity, for example, to try to beat the popular Maryland horse in the sequence as well, and try to beat Fit Esprit. I'm asking a question because I don't know the answer. Does Fit Esprit have a graded win?
No.
Okay, so she's picked up a lot of these.
Yeah, she won 5 ungraded stakes last year.
Okay, yeah, I know, it's unbelievable, and they're doing
Nothing great.
By the way, if I owned her and she was 12 for 19 in a track, I'd keep her at the track. Like I get it. No, I'm not making.
Well, she bounced around quite a bit. I mean, like she won a stakes at Penn, a stakes at Colonial Downs, was placed at Charlestown, placed at Parks. I mean, she really did a lot of traveling, but her best work is done at Laurel.
Yeah, she placed on Preakness Day as well. I remember that.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
It's but I would push for those 2 outside horses that are coming in for this race between Union Lake and Pass the Champagne. I think those are your 2 most likely.
I think, given who Barbara Frenchie was, this unionist and part of this famous poem and all that stuff for waving the American flag out the window, you got to go with Union Lake, right? It's like apropos that Union Lake would be the winner of this race.
Whoa,
all right.
Whoa! Did you use the term apropos?
Yeah, correctly.
Whoa! I leave for a week and this happens? We're saying apropos now on this
Come
show?
on now. I got a little bit up here, just a little bit. All right, we're gonna move on to the General George Stakes, and we're basically the same race, except this one's for open company. It's for the men and the women, although there are no women in this race. I don't think so, at least.
Yeah.
So what do we got in this one? Another grade 3 here. Dan, who do you like here?
Toss up for me between Eastern Bay and Factor It In. Probably use Barron a little bit underneath. Factor It In's just been very good. I hate the fact that he's probably going to be the favorite in this race, but he's won his last 4 at Laurel. I think he's something like 8 for 12 lifetime at Laurel, and he showed that he could step with graded stakes competition with those 2 near misses in New York, 3 and 4 starts back. And I also like the versatility he's shown. He won on the lead 2 starts back. And then last time out, they took him off when the pace was faster, and he swept by everybody. He's very logical on paper. Eastern Bay to me is very, very interesting. This is a horse that ran last time out in a graded stakes race in New York, and it looked like he had all the momentum from the back of the pack. And in the last 100 yards, he might have hung just a little bit, and it cost him the race. This is a horse with a lot of back class. I think he got beat a nose in this race a couple of years ago, so he's got some ability. He's going to be running on at the end. There's a chance this pace is going to get very fast because one of his stablemates, Pirate Rick, is blazing from the gate.
Eastern Bay is freaking 9 years old.
Mm-hmm. Most of the horses in this race, by the way, have been claimed at one point or another.
Yes.
Yeah. So is this a grade 3 field then?
It's so hard to decide what's a grade 3 field, and we see grade 1s that aren't grade 1s anymore.
Oh yeah, we talk about that all the time on the show.
I think this is probably a grade 3 field. I think Factor It In belongs. Barron has been one of the better sprinters in the Mid-Atlantic region for a long time right now. There's some solid horses in this race. Horses capable of running fast races. I'll say it's a grade 3.
I mean, this is a race though that. Go ahead.
So on that topic, Mike, I mean, how long has this been a $250,000 race? Because I seem to recall this being maybe 150,000 recently, and my point being that eventually people are going to start shipping for a $250,000 graded stakes.
Yeah,
and so
especially one this time of the year, right? There's not a whole lot of options.
Right. You got to spend the money to get people down here. So
and just
I'm happy to
remember a couple of years ago, guys, Frenzy Fire won this race.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah. I mean, over the years, it's not some nice horses. I have the race history in front of me. It wasn't a graded stakes until the early 90s.
Okay.
And had a price of $200,000. It's never been run for a higher purse than this, and it was a grade 2 until 2012 when it's been when it was downgraded to grade 3. But as Dan said, it's a pretty solid grade 3 type bunch. A lot of strong local sprinters. Of course, last year Cordmaker from Maryland won it, but it's been won by Imperial Hint in recent years. Who else won it? Silver Wagon won it. Affirmed Success back in the day. So, few decent horses.
Of course, this race is
I think this is the only.
Go ahead, Louis. Sorry.
This is the only thing the Cash Barn doesn't do well is bring horses off of this kind of layoff, and so I'm leaving Eastern Bay out here, even though everything Dan said is absolutely true. I'm only doing it based on the layoff. Maybe that he won't fire for whatever reason. I do like the outside poster factor in it. I think it's absolutely a great spot for him, and I think this field is a great spot for him. He loves Laurel, and I think if I'm going really skinny in the late part of the card, this might be it. It might be a factor in it. All
right. Well, that does. Oh, we're gonna do the last race just to kind of complete the sequence there, right?
I want to do it just because I told the Maryland people.
What did you do, Louis?
Oh my! I have a setup out here that.
I think you're drinking. You're drinking though. No.
Right? It started raining, so I had to move.
Oh, I gotcha.
Because it's the Caribbean and it just rains whenever the hell it wants. I begged the Maryland people not to have a nickel claimer at the end of these sequences, and now there's a starting optional claimer, and I feel like
you got to talk about it.
100%.
All right, well then go for it. You start us off. Pick Italian dressing and let's move on.
I think there's a chance to go a little bit skinny here, which is nice. I think you got to play the one horse. I think you got to use Bandits Warrior here, coming out of Charlestown, but is 2 for 8 lifetime on the track here. Peyton Elizabeth is an interesting horse out of the Ness barn, coming in off the first claim. Ness, just terrific off the first claim, 28%. Ness and Rodriguez hitting at 27%. Sort of royalty at Laurel as well. So I think you got to use that horse. And I don't know. I think there's some other ones. Dan, I think Proper Retire has been running well as well at the sprint distance. And so we're getting 6 furlongs here for that horse as well. And it's the kind of race that, John Robbs to just pick off at the end of the day anyway.
What do you think about this one, Dan?
On paper, it looks like there's a lot of speed in this race, doesn't it? Bandits Warrior, Proper Attire. You've got the much improved Miss Casey. But the fact that Bandits Warrior and Proper Attire are both trained by John Robb, I wonder if they're really going to get involved in a pace dispute. Proper Attire has been running in very good form recently, and she showed at Pimlico that she could sit second early and sort of brush past horses. I think in the form she's in right now, I'm going to use her. Peyton Elizabeth's the closer. If this pace becomes a barbecue, Peyton Elizabeth, as you mentioned, off the Ness Reclaims, the one that's going to be running late.
John?
Yeah, as Dan said, there's a lot of speed in here. I'm sure we all know, by the way, who Bandits Warrior is a half-sister to. Anybody know?
Anna's Bandit.
That's right, yeah. Who just had her first poll last month. It's on a tap it. Bandits Warrior, just like her half-sister, is quite speedy. So is Proper Attire. I think if anyone is going to outkick everyone else early, it's going to be Proper Attire. She has the best early pace figures in the field and has gone gate to wire in her last 2 starts pretty easily. Outside draw is not great, but if the X-Man is aggressive enough, he'll get up to the rail and lead with her. So I think we'll know in about the first 5 seconds if Proper Attire is going to win or not. And if the pace does end up being very fast, I think Peyton Elizabeth is most likely one to scoop it up.
All right. Well, guys, we always appreciate you coming on. Louis, I hope you're enjoying Puerto Rico.
I want to let the guys pub everything they're doing. Obviously, we'll get together in a month for those 2 preps that we're going to talk about between the Weaver City Miss and the Testio. We'll make sure that we do that as well. Dan, where can people find you and what should they be watching for?
Head on over to drf.com. You'll see my race advances, previews, recaps for anything Mid-Atlantic related, especially at Maryland. Head on over to the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel for lots of handicapping videos.
He makes our videos look terrible, by the way.
Oh yeah,
I don't want to pub his videos. They're so good. They're so well produced. I don't want to pub those.
Look, I don't like Dan, but people do. So it's just I have to have it on. I get it. No, I get it.
John, tell everybody what you got going on.
Well, find me on a personal account, as you can see at They're Off, for all the happenings with Maryland Breds in the world. Find us at Maryland TB, talking about all the events going on at the Maryland Horse Library, brand new in Reisterstown. So if you're in the area, stop by. And we'll also be announcing the Maryland Year-End Champions pretty soon. So stay tuned for that. And on Saturday, we'll have coverage of all the Maryland Breds, hopefully a few Maryland Bred winners. And I also want to note that if Eastern Bay does win General George, he will become a new Maryland Bred millionaire, which will be pretty neat. So once again, that's at They're Off and at Maryland TB for all my good stuff and all my not so good stuff too.
I want to know, when did you get that Twitter handle? I need to seriously know.
Because when I way back in the day, I was part of a message board called the TVG Community.
Uh-huh.
And when I signed up for it, my screen name was "And They're Off." And so when I started a Twitter account, I wanted to be "And They're Off" again, but it was taken, so I took
They're Off. Still, to get that is pretty impressive. So how long ago was that? I mean, that's
9 years ago.
So, all right, that wasn't taken 9 years ago,
No. And it fits, too, because, I grew up going to Monmouth Park a lot. I grew up listening to Larry Colmus. And he never says, "And they're off." He always just says, "They're off."
They're off. Yeah.
So it's very appropriate in that way, too.
By the way, just to schedule you guys, we have our broadcast schedule for Preakness. We're doing a show 10 to noon. I have an ESPN affiliate show here in Louisville, where Mike is.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to be doing that live at Pimlico. So Black Eyed Susan Day, I will see both of you. All right.
And we're staying at John's house.
I'm excited.
Is that right?
Yeah, we're staying. Well, John lives in
John's
Laura.
house?
We're not staying with John yet.
Oh, we're not.
I got space for maybe I should probably about 3 people. So if y'all
That's all it is. It's perfect.
maybe one of you sleep on my couch.
I'm a couch guy.
The floor is yours.
So awesome. All right. Well, there we got it all settled then, Louis. There you go. So,
all right, guys. Appreciate it very much. I'll see you in a month.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
oh, did Louis leave? Zach, you there?
Yeah.